Welcome. I'm Tambry Harris, founder of Going Forward Survivors to Thrivers and author of the book Awakening the Light, a Survivors to Thrivers Going Forward story. And I'm grateful for you to be here with us tonight as we explore ways to really support an important group of people, those individuals who have experienced trauma and abuse, and try to help them claim their whole selves and doing that in a holistic way. And so we have tonight individuals who will be speaking from mind, body, and spirit. And I know our audience is representing those three communities as well. So I'm so grateful for you to be here. So let me tell you a little bit about what tonight is about. First of all, I'm going to share with you the genesis of the book. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, the organization, and who the book was written for. We're also going to listen to speakers again from those three different fields, from the therapy, medical, and faith community, to talk about the value that they see in the book. And we're going to talk about how can we expand this to really reach into that vulnerable population and help survivors of sexual abuse really begin to claim their whole selves. We will have a Q&A at the end, but you can be putting your questions in all along. There's a Q&A button at the bottom, so please do that. And after that, we will close with a mindful moment. One thing I do want you to know, though, there is a gift giveaway. So if you're able to stay with us after the closing, the official closing, we'd love for you to take part in that. So just stay tuned to that. So now I'm going to invite members of my advisory team as well as our speakers to join me as we seek to build community as we light our candles. So first with the advisory team, I invite Tori DeShazer. She is my manager of community engagement. Mary Frances Comer, who is my spiritual resource and guide. And my speakers, I have Dr. Leah Sharnan, Dr. Cheryl Cornelius, and Reverend Anthony Hodge. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Each one of these individuals has a heart for this cause, and they really are trying to find ways in their own way to expand the light. And so to create community amongst ourselves, we each have a candle in our respective spaces that we're going to light. And if you have a candle as well, I invite you to participate so that you can be part of this virtual community as we seek to shine the light and expand it. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I spent about 14 years in corporate America, where I worked with leaders, teams, and different organizations creating development strategies. I then left corporate America to go out on my own, and I focused on leadership and life coaching. I also went and obtained a certification in spiritual direction because I really wanted to be able to serve the whole of the person. So that's a little bit about my kind of official background. What's also important to know about me is I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and I'm also a survivor of domestic violence. And as many of you know, those two things often go hand in hand because when we experience sexual abuse, particularly as a child, we end up creating these limiting beliefs that then guide us in our lives, often in not helpful ways. So one of mine was, I am not worthy. And what that led me to do is try and prove myself. So I tried to prove myself through my master's degree and through my 8 to 10 different certifications, and every role I held I tried to excel at and get the accommodations and the awards. That never really filled me. I was living a shell of a life. And the other problem was that I did not believe that I deserved to be treated well. And so that led me to enter into unhealthy relationships. And that's so true for so many survivors. So it took years to work through that, to work through those limiting beliefs and begin to claim what I call a going forward story. So 3 years ago, when all the hashtag Me Too hands started going up, I wondered, first of all, I was really proud of them because it's so hard to even raise your hand and say, this happened to me. But then I wondered, how are they doing? Are they stuck like I was in that survivor place, living with these limiting beliefs and these unhealthy patterns? And I really felt led to use my background, both my professional background and my personal background, to help them. And so what I did was I created an organization called Going Forward Survivors to Thrivers. We created a website, survivorstothrivers.com, to provide encouragement and resources. There's a blog that goes out twice a month to, again, provide encouraging information, but also to provide self care tips and different ways to really start on that healing journey. I also created retreats that were, I would deliver one on one, but also in small groups. So 4 or 5 people could come together if they wanted to do this healing work as a community. Well, what happened was the more I was communicating the availability of the retreats, I increasingly was asked to speak. And so I found myself talking to churches, at fundraisers. I also even was invited to speak at a university. So I increasingly became comfortable with my voice and my story. I also saw that people were reluctant to come out for these retreats that I sought to offer. And I recognized the fact that this community is very vulnerable and timid, and they have been caught trapped in the secrecy and the silence and the shame that surrounds this topic for so long. They really weren't ready to come out and participate. So that's what led to the book. So with the book, the first half, I share my story, and I invite the reader to go along with me by engaging them in questions. And then the second half of the book, I invite them to look at their story. And they still hear my voice with them, but the focus is really on them claiming their going forward chapters and going forward story. So that's a little bit about me in the book. What I'd like to do now is to move into having others share about the book. I had a launch earlier in October where I invited people who had supported both the funding of the book as well as writing reviews. And so we had experts from the 3 different fields speak on that occasion, and we had a video of that. And so what we're going to do tonight is show you a clip from that video of someone from one of the 3 fields, mind, body, spirit, and then we'll have one of our speakers come in to speak to what they heard on the video clip and the value they found in the book. So on the next slide, you're going to see a representation from Leslie Maitre Caniff, who is representing the um, therapy group, and she does somatic healing, which often means that you're looking at the body and how the body responds, and she really focuses on mindfulness. So let's hear what Leslie has to say.
Contribution has been so generous and just beautiful. Thank you for the community. Thank you for therapists, spiritual leaders, as you say, but everyone, survivors. You're right. There's all kinds of trauma. We have COVID-19 trauma right now, sexual, physical abuse, but also childhood abuse, attachment trauma, relational trauma, spiritual trauma, financial trauma, political trauma. I mean, just the sky's the limit. And your book is really a journey. Even, I love that it's so personal. We can really connect to your heart and just feel for you, but also at the same time, I think people have a chance to really look at their own experience too and see where they can make some parallels and just really see how you can work towards that freedom from the abuse that we've experienced. I think that, as a psychotherapist, I do support the mind, body, spirit for sure. As you guys know, people that know me, I think that it's so important to make a safe space and just through that to have self-exploration, and just really begin to understand how the conscious and unconscious mind and how we think about our past could be keeping us stuck in old patterns. We kind of know we are, but we don't know how that's happening. And Tambry's therapist did this with her, but she was also so brave and willing, to go there and do the work. So I really want you to hear that I'm so proud of you. As a therapist, I call this process the reconsolidation of traumatic memory. And, that's just the therapist's concept. That's pretty powerful, really. It's a lot to do with neuroscience and rewiring the brain, but ultimately you want to be able to have a felt sense of the act of triumph. Being able to kind of write a different ending to the story and to attach a new experience to it, more of what you want. And you've done that over and over again. I mean, the beauty of this.
So that was Leslie, and now I'd like to invite Dr. Leah Sharnan to join us. And Leah she utilizes trauma-informed cognitive counseling as well. And one of the things that really resonated for me with Leah is that she also, part of her passion is to try and help people get unstuck, which is exactly when I talk about my limiting beliefs. I was so stuck with them. And she also has a passion for social justice and certainly helping support people as they try and navigate this darkness and come into the light. It's very congruent with my heart. So welcome, Leah. It's so nice to have you.
It's so nice to be here with everyone, Tambry. I think we can kind of feel the warm energy together as we're connecting tonight. I just appreciate being here.
Thank you. So as you listen to what Leslie had to share, what kind of resonated for you with what she talked about?
Yeah. So Leslie certainly speaks my language in many ways. And so do you, right? I think about this experience of the mind-body connection and how much I think part of what's beautiful about your book, Leslie, is you're trying to lean into the normalization of like this pain exists because of a traumatic experience, because of a way in which the body wasn't safe and was violated, and the ways in which the brain then kind of encodes it. So the brain goes to these areas, and really common themes of trauma are concerns about safety, about trust, power, control. You spoke to kind of earlier, this, I'm going to accomplish so much to show my worth. I think that's also another way to lean into like choice and control, right? And so when Leslie was speaking, I was thinking about so many of the ways in which I've heard survivors blamed or internalize blame, like this was my fault, this was something I did. Society then provides that message or reinforces it in some ways. I so read that in your journey, especially early on, some of those limiting beliefs, Tambry. And it makes me think about, can we turn the narrative some to appreciating the brain? Like, it is such a powerful mechanism. And I think that's some of what Leslie was speaking to about the neurological changes. The brain goes through these changes saying, I'm going to protect me at every cost possible. So one of those ways is activating my nervous system and saying, I have to protect me. I have to tell my body when it's on high alert. We get activated over what seems like small things, but at the core of it, it can be so related to the brain and the body is just trying to protect you from those experiences not happening again, right? And there's just so much beautiful complexity to that mind, body, spirit connection and the way that the brain protects us and the way that we've encoded our stories. And then how do we recode it? How do we retell it? Similar to really the journey that's in your story, Leslie, in the book that you're providing to others.
That was my hope, because I really, sometimes you feel like your experience is just unique. And so by sharing some of that specificity, I was hoping people could feel joined and encouraged to continue to really examine theirs. So how do you see the book really being a resource to therapists and others in the community?
Right. So not gonna lie, as I was reading it, I was like, is she like using my interventions? Like, you are in my therapist brain completely, right? So you go into these wonderful deep dive, like core beliefs. Where did we learn them? How do we, right, learn messages from our families, from society, growing up? I mean, as children, we social reference. We look to others for learning. We look to culture for learning. We look to our community. And so you start off right off the bat with exploring, how did we start learning our limiting beliefs from a very young age, and how that interacts, right, with our behavior choices. And so as I was thinking about this is so much of the crux of the work of change. Are we choosing behaviors that are congruent with how we want to live, with congruent with our light, congruent with like these values that we're forming and then want to feel free and uninhibited to choose and lean into? So I so love that also right off the bat, you're integrating parts of your story. And like first chapter, there are exercises, there are passages, there are self-reflections to encourage the reader to already start leaning into that work so early on and creating a dialogue throughout the story of rewriting those limiting beliefs that we learned so early in childhood, especially when trauma has occurred. So yeah, this was very much so like, any one exercise I could easily point to in clinical work and say, let's lean in and let's not rush it, right? I think that's a key.
You know, that's the thing. That's the other thing I liked about maybe having a book, is people can do it at their own pace. And if there's something that they need to work on a little longer, they can stay in that space for a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And Tamber, I don't know if you've gotten feedback, but I could imagine for some people it's hard to even start leaning into the work initially, right? Even if it's in the privacy of a book written material. But I think that's also one of the beautiful qualities of having a book like this, that it can be within privacy, within a safe space, a way that you can create a container to work through these experiences and these thoughts.
Thank you, Leah. I so appreciate your thoughts. And any closing comments you would have?
I think, you know, we talk and there's so much conversation now, which is a beautiful thing, in growth of mental health and emotional health and wellness, of vulnerability, right? And with vulnerability, there comes increased connection and opportunities for thriving. We are social humans. We need connection and we need stories to be told and to be heard when one is ready to share it. And so the fact that you're providing that opportunity is just, it's just such a gift to survivors in general and to all the fields in which we all represent in our helping ways. And it's just really appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. So the next, we're going to move to body. And so there's a video clip by Dr. Deborah Coles, who is an internal medicine practitioner and primary care provider. And Debbie always talks about how critical it is to look at the whole of a person. So let's listen to what she has to say.
A primary care internist, and early on in medicine, I learned that practicing medicine was like detective work. You were given a lot of symptoms and then asked to find the cause, and sometimes that's easy. Someone has a sore throat, you do a culture, it comes back strep, and you can treat it easily. Other times, those symptoms are a little bit more difficult, and the common things are ruled out, and yet the patient still doesn't feel well. And oftentimes we put them on medications or try to treat the symptoms, but to me that wasn't always helpful or helpful for the long run. I didn't want somebody dependent on a medication to be able to function or live their life to the fullest. And so I tried to dig a little bit deeper. And if I said it once, I probably said it 40 times. Your head is connected to your body. And, you know, there's no obvious difference where the head doesn't affect the rest of the body. And so starting to delve into that, all of course in 15 minutes, which is why I chronically ran late, took a little bit more insight and questioning and trying to really see what was going on with someone. Um, Sometimes they were accepting of that. Other times you might spend 30 minutes convincing them that it's okay that they're having physical symptoms from something that happened to them in the past. Um, and that's one place I really see where your book is going to help tremendously. Um, it's non-threatening. It's easy to read. It gives someone else's story. And so they're able to compare and see, you know, do my symptoms, go along with this? Could it possibly be that whatever I'm feeling could be a result of what happened to me? So it's really a great way to kind of delve into that. Again, non-threatening, and also allowing people to work at their own pace. Um, People can take it as fast or as slow as they need to do it. And so I think it'll be really great once you discover that some of these symptoms may be due to other things and are due to other things, trauma that happened at any point in their life, that we can give them this and then refer them to other people that can really help them delve into it if that's what they need.
So now I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Cheryl Cornelius. And you can see her quote up on the screen right now. She is the chair of graduate studies in nursing at Queen's University. She has her Doctor of Education as well as her Master of Science in Nursing. And she also is a professor at Queen's, and she works with the nurses to try and really help them understand the link of mental health and medical care. So welcome, Cheryl. I'm so glad to have you here with us tonight.
It's nice to be here. Thank you so much for including me, Tambry.
You're welcome. So I'll ask you a similar question as to Leah. So as you were listening to Dr. Coles, what resonated for you when you were hearing what she had to say?
I liked what she was saying about the investigative work, because very rarely does somebody come in and they just put all their cards on the table and let you know exactly what's going on. We really do have to dig a little deeper as healthcare providers. You have to know which questions to ask and that kind of get a little deeper. They come in with pain, they come in with anxiety, maybe an ulcer, but there's something deeper. Why are they repeatedly coming in for pain or repeatedly coming in for anxiety? They want you to ask more and get a little deeper. And I love how your book really went through the different phases that you went through. I don't think you got it all in one instance either. I think you it rolled out as other things were happening in your life. And I think that's so real for the patient and for the healthcare provider. What I liked most was that you could work through it with them. It's almost like you gave the healthcare provider some prompts in your reflective statements, and you can help know exactly what to say. Sometimes we can listen and we can take notes and we can try to get them to speak a little more, but sometimes it's hard to know exactly how to get to the root. And knowing where you've come from, you really kind of gave us a little more of a toolbox in those little prompts. So I really like that. I think it would be an excellent book for a lot of my nursing students that are going to go into mental health or even into emergency, because we know that's where a lot of our mental health pops up, is in the emergency department for the first time. So
I could see that. I could see that. And I appreciate what you're saying about the fact that it's not a one-time fix. It's something that there are layers you have to look at. And sometimes I think it helps normalize the fact that there are layers to work through and how things can manifest and then open themselves up over time. Well, so any other thoughts you would like to share about this? I know I love hearing you say that you could see your nursing students utilize this book, because that's exactly what I would hope, is that our communities can embrace it as a tool and a resource. Any other thoughts you'd like to share about kind of as we're speaking to these three different communities, insight you might have?
Excuse me. I think coming from an education background, I think the way you set up the book with the give you a little bit and then ask you to talk about your own story and then come back and reflect, I think that really helps somebody learn what's going on with them and how to deal with those coping mechanisms in a good um, in a good area. And from an educational standpoint, we know that being able to reflect back and connect it to things is going to help us in the long run. So I definitely think that it is very helpful for both the patient and for the healthcare provider. So thank you for creating such a good work.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I very much value your words. Thank you. Well, so now we'll move to the last piece, mind, body, spirit. And so we have a video from Ladane McLeese Pulaski, who has her min, master's in divinity. She's also the executive director of Mecklenburg Ministries Interfaith Network here in Charlotte. And they really look to try and combine efforts from across faith communities to have a positive impact on the community and social justice. So let's listen to a little bit of what Ladane has to say.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. So Tambry mentioned earlier in this session something that she and I were talking about on Friday, which is that she's been a little bit surprised at the number of people who have really related to the book, despite the fact that their particular kind of trauma was something different. It wasn't sexual abuse. It was something else that had happened. And when we were talking about that on Friday, I was reminded of that paradoxical truth that the more particular we are, the more universal we are. And that I think that when we're able to tell a true story, that it helps to tap into, in a really powerful way, into the true story. And by that, I don't mean like the true story of some particular religious faith, but the true story of what it is to be human and what it means to be human in a world that has both deep joy and bruising pain. And so I'm not at all surprised that people who have experienced other kinds of trauma are finding the book to be helpful, because I think Tambry has done such a lovely job of being so authentic and so honest and so particular in what she shares, that it's inviting us into a true story. And I think when you're invited into a true story, you really feel that you know, oh, this is true. This is an authentic, real story. And one of the things that I think that why that's so powerful is that as you, Tambry, as you talk about your discovery of divine love and a divine presence that's been with you even through the hardest times, it's believable because like by the time we get to that part of your story, we know that you are telling us truth, that that you're being authentic. And I think I had mentioned to you that there's one of the stories that you tell that I found so powerful was a meditation where you saw this dark cave and were willing to enter into the dark cave with God, and then the walls just melt away. And I just found that to be such a powerful image. But in part, it's a powerful image because like you've told us truthfully about the darkness, right? Like we know your dark cave isn't, oh, I lost the grocery list, right? Your dark cave is dark. And so I think I think that when we're talking about why the book works on that spiritual level, it's because you've been so honest about the darkness that we can believe you when you talk about the light. Um, and so one of the things I was thinking about is that I think that the book and some of the survival quotes you've had on here kind of point to that. That if you're reading the book and you're not there yet, if you haven't experienced God as loving, if you haven't experienced God as kind, if you haven't found your own sense of light, you can believe it's possible, um, because of the way Tamri's told the story, because she's been honest, because she's been true, because you've been recognizing all along that this is a true story. Um, it just becomes believable that you too could learn how to embrace yourself as a beloved child of God, and that you too could, whatever the image is for you, maybe the image of the cave works, maybe it's something completely different, but for me the book really works on a spiritual level it's because the darkness has been real. You can believe that the light is possible even if you're not there yet. And the other thing that I think that is helpful, I think the book will be super helpful, of course, to any of us who have experienced abuse. But also, if you're in a relationship with a survivor and that's not your history, and you want to know, like, what is this? What is this stuff that's coming up? I think it would be a great book to read if you love somebody who has been through trauma. Would be so helpful to have this story. And then of course faith leaders, every faith leader has people that they minister to who have been through things like this. And again, if that's not your story, if that's not something you've experienced, what a gift to have such an honest and helpful story to be able to share. And the final thing I would say is that I think it's so helpful that the book moves from being Tambri's story to being your story. And that sometimes I've read stuff that's, it's helpful, but there's never that part where like I get to kind of claim my own power and my own experience. And I think the book does such a nice job of balancing Tambri's very helpful and powerful story with me becoming the main character in my own story.
So now I'd like to invite Reverend Anthony Hodge. He has his Doctorate of Ministry degree and has served in several churches and is now the district superintendent in the United Methodist Church. He also was a commissioned chaplain in the U.S. Naval Reserves and served people who were of various faiths and even agnostic. And so I think about how people who have suffered trauma might be struggling to try and find where is spirit in this. And so I'm sure that you work through this with a number of people. So I'm honored to have you here with me tonight. Thank you, Anthony.
Well, thanks for having me, Tambry. And as I was reflecting on some of what Reverend Ladane shared, there's a very potent song that comes up with some lyrics. You don't know my story. You don't know the things I've been through. You can't imagine all the pain I've gone through. And knowing you for the time that I've known you, I didn't know your story. And by you sharing in the book so openly, it gave me an opportunity to reflect on trauma, because all trauma is not applicable to everyone, but trauma is real for many persons. And what I saw and what I continue to see is you shared how you were able to work through your process. And I think Reverend Ladane talked about, she used very phrases like darkness and light. And so you were able to transition, so to speak, from a point of darkness to light, and that light, I am sure, wasn't easy to get to, but you worked it. And again, knowing you from the vantage point that I do, if someone were to look at you, they say, Tammy, not her. But that's what they say about a lot of us. And so what I appreciate from the book, one of the things is now, and unfortunately, I am no longer commissioned, but I wonder if I had had this as a resource, working with Navy personnel, Marines, Coast Guard, could I have made a greater impact? But I can do it now in the context that I currently serve as a supervisor with clergy, and maybe some of their parishioners, or even individuals who I know personally. So it gives me an opportunity, along with so many others, a chance to deal with what is real, and oftentimes not talked about.
Can you talk a little more about how you see it being a resource for faith leaders?
Well, not all of us are equipped, nor should we attempt to deal with many of the issues that our parishioners come to us with. But it gives us an opportunity to look at what could be some telltale signs of persons who need to be referred out. You will be able to see, and I have on many occasions, a person, they come to me with a problem, but the problem is always, and oftentimes, deeper than what I'm equipped to handle. But as they continue to come, I'm like, hold up, no. This is 2 to 3 sessions, but this is deeper. So, and oftentimes goes back to maybe something that they had to deal with, such as sexual abuse or physical abuse, or whatever the trauma might be. And so I think the book can also even aid persons who are in pastoral roles to say, okay, these are telltale signs. I'm not equipped, but I can refer, and I need to refer. So this person can move again from the darkness to the light phase of their lives with intentionality.
Do you think it would be a resource to be able to provide to those parishioners that might be feeling alone and uncertain about what they're going through?
Absolutely, because I think one of the things we often deal with trauma is secrecy. We don't want people to know what we've been through or what has happened to us. So it will at least get us an opportunity to work through individually, and then may cause us to say, okay, I can move beyond this to other helping professionals
To reach out.
who can aid me in a more deeper way. So it's a very good starting point.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you for your thoughts. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
I'm next going to invite Reverend Mary Frances Comer. And there will be a quote up from her as well. And Mary Frances she has her Master's of Divinity degree, as well as a Master's in Sociology and Psychology. So she has taught in these fields. She has been a lead pastor at Unitarian Universalist Church. She's also served as a chaplain for Carolina's Medical Center and the Trauma Center. So she certainly has a lot of different perspectives she can give us as she thinks about what she's heard and as she's read the book, how she sees it being a resource. So thank you so much for being with us, Mary Frances. And you're still muted. There you go.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you so much for this conversation. This is such an important topic, as everyone has indicated, touching mind and body and spirit or soul. And it's not just an event that happens and then it's over. As victims, we know that these effects can linger for years and lifetimes. So I really appreciate the therapeutic and medical perspectives offered. And from a spiritual aspect, I can say that victims often feel unworthy of relationships, not just with other people, but also relationship with God, or whatever is holy to them, whatever that paradigm looks like. And so I think it really is a part of a cultural mandate that we've all been under to not talk about this topic, um, to hide it away rather than to bring it to light and focus on wholeness and worthiness. And every religion I know of uses light as a metaphor for God. And so I love this, that we keep bringing up the light as a symbol. And so as victims, we know that our past has a very real impact on our present and our potential futures. And so your work is so important as we seek to spread the message of possibility and transformation. And I think more than ever before, this is a work that I wish I had 30 years ago when I was teaching, first teaching children, and then certainly in college, because there was never a semester that went by in all those decades that there were not victims who came to me and shared their stories, and they had um, no good resource, and I could refer them to things, but never something as effective as I feel your book is, because it is not just a relatable story, but as was already said, it is a gentle invitation to contemplation, to reflection, and it gives you those opportunities to do those, I'm going to call it a workshop with self. And it is a catalyst for transformation. So thank you so much. And I really meant what I said in my recommendation for the book. I think it should be on the shelves of every minister of every sort, of educators, social workers. And I love this idea that we just heard about it being available to people in the military, where we know this is an issue. Every library, every prison, wherever survivors exist, I believe truly that this is the best work that I've seen out in my search over the last 30 years.
You know, I just have to say, I feel so full right now. Thank you. Thank you for your words. I mean, all of our speakers tonight, I'm just so grateful for your advocacy and your support of this work. Mary Frances, you use the word catalyst, and that's what I hope to be. That's what I hope the Going Forward Survivors and Thrivers organization is, as well as this book, a catalyst for us to bring light into the subject, because so often we don't talk about it. And that then is what allows this to continue to be pervasive, and the healing doesn't happen. And so thank you. Thank you for that. And what you've just given me is a very nice segue to our next step, which is talking about I talked about trying to expand the light. And so we really do want to expand the reach of this book. And so thinking about who could use this book from a mind, body, spirit perspective, thinking about how might we build awareness within our communities, because we all represent powerful healing communities that could touch lives and really bring this hope and healing to individuals who may just find themselves in this darkness they don't understand. And then also, are there other organizations that we might be able to reach out to? So for example, in Charlotte, you know, we're working with Safe Alliance, which is a place for victims of domestic violence. We're working with Brave Step, which is an organization that helps victims of sexual abuse begin that first step into therapy. So thinking about what organizations can we reach out to? So as you see on this slide, I encourage you to think about your professional and your personal networks and think about what we can do as a community to really bring light into these fragile lives that could so benefit from this message of hope. And you see my email, tambry@survivorstothrivers.com. And if you could just email me with thoughts about how might we continue to build community, how might we use this book and this as a resource and a way to be a catalyst for conversation. Also, if you have individuals you'd like for me to reach out to, please send them to me. I would love to make connections. It gets me excited to think about what we can do if we all think about those 2 or 3 people to kind of continue to spread the word to. And I also just want to say thank you for being with me here tonight, listening and supporting this effort. And so if I haven't already sent you a book, I would love to do so. So please send me your physical address as well. So having said all that, we've been giving you a lot of information, and I told you we were going to have an opportunity for some questions. So at this time, I'm going to invite Tori DeShazer to join me. She may have been answering some questions all along, but I'll ask you, Tori, what questions do we have for our last few minutes together?
Hi, everybody. So Tammy, somebody asked, moving forward, what are your next steps?
Well, one thing is I'm going to get this. First of all, this is being recorded because I know everybody couldn't join us tonight. And so I will be sending you this video to be able to share with people you know. And so my hope is that this is a beginning of a wave of education and awareness that can grow from here. Tori is my engagement manager. She and I are going to be reaching out to individuals that you recommend to us, as well as others that we've become aware of. One thing that we're doing that's kind of fun is we're working with East Carolina University to talk to them about how might we live stream things for their students, and they're talking about having books available through their Dean of Students, free resources for their students. So think about the universities we might be able to reach. And so if you have universities that you think might be interested in engaging with us, we'd love to have that. So really, it's really more about follow up. I will tell you, I've tried to do some media launches, and there's been a lot of distraction recently with the elections and with the pandemic. So far there hasn't been much of a catch from a media broadcasting perspective. So we're really trying to do this grassroots.
Mm-hmm. All right, we had another one. So given COVID, and we've heard from Mind Body Spirit. So you tell me, how did this come about during COVID, and how do you see it being used as a resource during COVID?
So it's interesting. COVID, a lot of people are like, well, I'm so bored. I don't have anything to do. What are you doing? Well, I'm writing a book. It actually gave me some quiet time to be able to, I was already working on that, but it really gave me strength and focus to try and get this out. And part of the reason is I'm thinking that people have reflection time. And I have a friend who said, if we don't come out of COVID 2.0, shame on us. I mean, we've got a lot of time to do self-reflection and healing work and reflective work. So my hope is that people will be able to get the book and spend some time, invest in themselves to do the work. I will tell you that my heart hurts because, I mean, probably every one of you think about the fact that the abuse is happening right now. There's more people that are trapped in their homes. And so that worries me. And I just hope that people can at least hear messages of hope and encourage them to recognize that they deserve better than that, and they deserve to really invest in themselves. So I hope it gives people an opportunity to take the time to do the reflection.
I think that's wonderful. And our last question is, if someone contacts you via the website or whatever, who's not quite ready, what's your advice to them?
Not quite ready to do the work.
Right. Who hasn't actually addressed their problem. What would you advise them?
So on our website, we do have a kind of a contact form. So that is an easy way for people to kind of come through and connect with us. And then we reach back out. And I'm always very happy to just kind of talk with them and see where they are. Like some of the speakers said, I actually might even encourage them to look at the book because it helps self-identify what's similar to what I'm describing, and because a lot of the things are fairly universal. So I think sometimes just recognizing that you are worth the investment and taking that time. I will also say that for me, and there's a lot of this in the book, mindfulness is a really great place to start. Just recognizing that your breath is such a resource to you, and being able to feel grounded. I think being grounded is a really important place to start as you begin to move into the healing work and examining some of the trauma. So even small steps like doing some mindfulness pieces or even reflective questions. I'm a big journaler and I'm a huge advocate for that. So if they're open to journaling, I think that's a way to also begin to open the window a little bit and begin to get some thoughts out there. But what I talk about is you need to move from victim to survivor. You really need to work with a therapist to do that look back and to work through the trauma. And then where we really come in is when you're stuck in that survivor mode and you have those limiting beliefs and you need help trying to really recast those and break some of those unhealthy patterns you find yourself in to move into your going forward story. So more than likely that person would probably be about trying to get them to, if they haven't done any of the therapy work, trying to get them to a strong counselor who can really help them look at what they've been through from a holistic perspective.
That's wonderful. Okay. Thank you. I think we've answered all the questions thus far.
Okay, wonderful. Well, you have my email. So if more questions come up, feel free to email me. Do let me know if you would like a copy of the book. At this point, what we're going to do is we're going to move into a mindful moment. I'm going to ask Mary Frances Comer to come back and join us with some closing words. I also want to remind you, though, that we are going to do some giveaways. And so stay with us if you can for the giveaways. But if you need to let go, we completely understand. So, Mary Frances, can you please close us tonight?
Yes, thank you, Tambry. So if you have your candle, if you would take that now, and together we extinguish our candles, but we carry their warmth and meaning and light with us to expand beyond ourselves. And just as the smoke dissipates and spreads, so may we go in our various directions tonight as individuals and professionals to spread the potential for building communities of hope and transformation together, confident that we can make this world a better and safer place for all beings. Go in peace, blessed be, and may we all thrive.
Thank you, Mary Frances.